You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Derek. He's Kevin. How you doing?
Doing good, man. Getting ready for the Turkey Day, right? We're all the fun stuff, and I'm not even having turkey, so I'm grilling prime rib, buddy.
You and me both.
I'm not a big turkey fan, but that's all right. We're going to hang out with the family. We're going to have fun, watch some football. We got a great slate of games on Thursday, which I'm super happy about. And so we're just going to keep hammering away, man. So it'll be very fun. Very, very fun. So how you doing tonight?
You know, I can't complain. It's Tuesday night. Yeah, one of my favorite nights. I get to sit down with you. We get to talk some foosballs. We get to talk, and especially this one. This one's always fun because we got the Thursday, the bigger Thursday slate there. So we get to run through a little bit of our Friday, show in a little bit more depth here on a Tuesday. And you really look at some of the game lines, look at some of that stuff. Lots of fun there. And this really is kind of the Thanksgiving weekend's always the turning point, it seems like, for fantasy, where you are down and it is full on crunch time, right? You've got, depending upon your league format, in most cases, you've got 3 weeks left to secure your place in the playoffs, to secure your seeding for the playoffs, however that looks for you. You've got this week, you've got next week, and you got week 14 on that one. This is the 1 week, though, where we don't have any buys this during this slate of games here, whereas week 13, week 14, you do. So this is your chance to kind of, salt one away and really, see how your team stacks up against everybody else out there and really try and bring things home here. So very excited for this one. We do have a great show for you tonight. We're going to go through all the waiver wire good stuff. But of course, Tuesday, if you have any questions, throw them out there in the chat. Let's go ahead and chat about them. Let's get you guys ready, set to rock and roll and get everything set to try and win those cash and trophies over the weekend here. And all those good things. You can always find us on the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Good Old Boys FF, and over on the YouTube, Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast YouTube channel. YouTube.com/at Good Old Boys FF there as well. Click the subscribe button. YouTube's the best way to support this independent podcast. So making that march towards that 1,000, and we keep kind of creeping along there. So absolutely. But Kevin, while we wait for some of the questions to come in, all that kind of good stuff, let's just start talking a little bit about some of the the waiver wire and see kind of what options are out there and see who we're kind of liking out there for the waiver wire.
Fair enough. So I guess we'll start with tight end, right? Tight end's pretty slim pickings here. You had Gerald Everett, who was a late no-show for the Chiefs-Chargers game. Kyle Pitts went down with the ACL injury. Like, we're already down. Irv Smith, right? He went down earlier. So tight ends getting thinner and thinner. Darren Waller's on IR, right? So, I mean, tight end is not fun. Losing Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Kyle Pitts, Irv Smith Jr. So guys who you're not really thinking about are guys that you need to start taking a look at now to have viable resources there. So one is and now I'm losing his name.
You almost got to look at Taysom Hill, right?
You got to take a peek at Taysom Hill. You got to take a peek at one of the Saints tight ends, right? Or not
Juwan Johnson.
Excuse me. Juwan Johnson's one. I'm thinking Seattle. Noah Fant, right? Mm-hmm. He's been floating out on some waiver wires. Another guy who's been out there possibly still is Greg Dulcich, right? Like, you need to be taking a look at him. You need to be taking a look at
Gesicki and Ingram are both options out there as well.
Absolutely. And then why am I brain farting on this guy's name? Washington, Thomas.
Logan Thomas.
Logan Thomas. Thank you. Oh, my gracious.
It happens. It happens. It's a Tuesday before a holiday. What,
No doubt. I need some ginkgo or something, get my memory back. So Logan Thomas is one. So that kind of covers the tight end position, right? So that is all things to be aware of. As far as wide receivers go, Treylon Burks, right, in a lot of redraft leagues especially, he was dropped earlier after the big game against the Packers. You need to keep an eye on him. I think that you should also be looking out for Demarcus Robinson from the Ravens. He's kind of sneakily becoming Lamar's go-to guy, right?
Yep.
It's not Devin Duvernay. He's kind of the splash, high ceiling, extremely low floor guy. But Demarcus Robinson's actually been seeing a good amount of target share, even with Andrews coming back last week. So that's something that if you're needing help in the flex, there's always room for there. And then Darius Slayton. I know I was down on him last week, but with Wan'Dale Robinson tearing his ACL,
there's nobody left.
No, there is nobody left. So Darius Slayton. I mean, if you're in need of a flex play, that's something to look at. Greg Dortch might be making a recall to fantasy relevance, right? We'll see if Hollywood Brown's able to make it back. Rondale Moore, not so much. We know there's D-Hop, but there's got to be another option there. So Dortch could potentially fill those shoes. In a couple leagues, it's not nearly as sexy. Jerry Jeudy, right? Jerry Jeudy got dropped in a lot of different places, but he might be a guy that you're looking to try and fill back in and get some love on a little bit. And then you have your running backs, right? I guess some of the big things is Kyron Williams and Cam Akers for the Rams. Darrell Henderson is no longer with them. He was a kind of a surprise wave here today, so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think another guy, James Cook, is starting to see more touches, right? He had a really good game last week against the Browns, kind of went unnoticed, but
and he's got Detroit this
carries, 89 yards. They had Detroit this week. Like, you could see James Cook start to emerge. And then Latavius Murray is a guy who's going to have basically sole reign of the Denver backfield. Again, it's not the most attractive option, but especially coming into this week against Carolina, it is an option that's flex worthy, especially if you're struggling at the running back position here. So there's some options there. I'm trying to think who else One
other name that I didn't hear you mention was Samaje Perine. Definitely worth a look at.
Yes.
Because Joe Mixon in concussion protocol. If Joe Mixon misses this week, Samaje Perine could see that Joe Mixon type of workload where he sees 20-plus opportunities over the course of this week. Typically he comes in and sees a lot of third down work as it is now. But now if he gets that rushing work on top of kind of his normal third down work there, that could be a lot. We saw him score a lot of touchdowns this past week. Granted, they were all through the air, but had a very, very good kind of sneaky, quiet game in relief of Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I think the one thing about Perine, and if you have to play it, you have to play it, that makes me pause at least, is Tennessee is really good against running backs. They're not so much against wide receivers, but that is a tough matchup for Mixon or Perine is going up against this Tennessee front seven. So yes, if you got to play him, you got to play him. I understand it, but I think I like a couple other options more just for this week specific. If it was a longer term injury for Mixon, or we knew he was going to be out multiple weeks instead of possibly, we'll see how concussion protocol goes, but possibly this one, I think I'd be a little bit higher on Perine. But hedge your bets, right? If you need some running back help, if you're a Mixon owner, you probably want to take a look at Perine to make sure that you're covered, so that way you don't have an unexpected hole in your roster, and go from there. And then quarterbacks this week, you got, I think Matt Ryan's an option this week going up against the Steelers on Monday night. If Joe Flacco is the Jets starter again, Joe Flacco did a pretty good job being the quarterback or the starting quarterback for the Jets. So again, if you're in a pinch, that's a possibility. Jimmy G, we just saw what he did on Monday night, 4 touchdowns. I'm not saying he's going to do that again, but I think he can put up another solid performance here in week 12. So some options kind of all the way around here if you're looking for some injury help, or you're just trying to shuffle your roster up a bit and get it fine-tuned for the home stretch here and getting ready for the playoffs.
Right. Marcus Mariota is another guy that I would throw out there as well. Again, right, like not a sexy name at the quarterback position, and the play isn't overly flashy either, but he kind of just consistently gets you that fringe QB1 week in, week out type of deal there. So if you're needing a streamer, that is a potential option for you. And he has done all right, just kind of week in, week out, being that guy. Never going to necessarily give you a QB winning performance, but certainly has been good enough to not necessarily lose you a week either. So an option there if you need to just put points up because you got like Justin Fields that is hurt and you need somebody to put in there if you need to. So, alrighty. Any other thoughts here on the waiver wire?
No, I think that covers the bulk of it, unless we get specific questions regarding it.
Yeah, and of course we'll hit those ones up as they come in. But we do have a couple of questions in the chat here. Luka Magic over on YouTube, half point PPR, Conklin, Dulcich, or Ingram, Carr, Cousins, or Danny Dimes. I'm gonna take Dulcich on the first one, and I would actually probably rank those Dulcich, Conklin, Ingram is how I'd rank the tight ends. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I'm dang near about flipped. I think I'd go Ingram, Dulcich, and then Conklin. Not knowing who the starting quarterback is for the Jets truly kind of worries me, so I'd want to avoid that situation. Up until their bye week, Evan Ingram had been pretty heavily involved in this Jags passing game. I think that continues, even though they're going up against Baltimore. They're going to have to throw the ball to continue to stay in it. Obviously, Etienne's going to try and balance that out on the ground, but Trevor Lawrence will continue to toss the rock around. Greg Dulcich is a nice play, but my fear with this Broncos offense is that it's the Broncos offense, and even though they're playing a really bad Carolina team, we're just going to see a lot of punts. Like the touchdown upside of Ingram, I think outweighs what Dulcich can do. Even if he sees 4 or 5 catches, I think Ingram can get that, probably some better yardage and even a red zone look or two. So for me, I'd lean Ingram, then Dulcich. And then as for the quarterbacks, I'm not convinced. I would not start Danny Dimes. Let me start with that. I am not starting Danny Dimes. He has no one to throw the ball to. Yes, you have probably the biggest boost with his legs, right, as far as being able to get some of those bonus points. But I just don't see the Giants being able to come up with a solid enough game plan through the air on a short week going to Dallas after trying to recover from their mistakes at home against Detroit last week, that it's going to be fruitful for fantasy purposes. Derek Carr has been pretty good here the last 3 weeks, right? We saw he was able to do just enough, had a solid game against Denver, and then threw that deep touchdown pass to Devontae Adams late. So I'm okay there. I think him and Kirk Cousins are kind of 1A and 1B. Cousins has arguably the best receiver in football, right? I mean, I know Derek Carr would make an argument about that with the way that Adams looked on Sunday. But I do think that those two are more of a toss-up. Based off of what happened last week, I think I'd lean Carr. So I guess that's your answer. Carr, then Cousins, then Danny Dimes is how I'd rank them. If you have another option than Cousins, he typically doesn't have 2 bad games in a row. But man, oh man, last week was so bad. And the Cowboys got so much pressure on Kirk Cousins. You got to think that Bill Belichick's looking at that going, hey, I got guys who can do something similar to that. Like we can scheme it differently, but get to the end result. And they may not get 7 sacks, but they can sure get 4 or 5 and make it really difficult on Kirk Cousins. So Carr by a hair. I'm in a situation in my home league. I got to start Cousins. Like, it's not the most ideal thing, but I think I trust Kirk Cousins slightly more than I trust Matt Ryan. So I got to start Kirk Cousins as my second QB.
Right. And I think I'm kind of right there with you, right? Some of the other things too, right? Cousins that has been notoriously bad in the prime time. He's got that late night, Showtime type of slot on Thursday night there. So I think I'm right there with you. I think I kind of go Carr, Cousins, Danny Dimes there. Carr and Cousins extremely close. Danny Dimes, right? Like, this is one of those that if you're Dallas, you know that there's really only a couple of ways that the Giants are going to be able to move the ball down the field. One is with Saquon's legs and coming out of the backfield and maybe catching some passes and trying to open things up that way, and Danny Dimes scrambling for it. So at that point, right, like, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Cowboys scheme this thing up to the point where they're seeing 8 or 9 in the box every single play and trying to bring pressure in there and running some spies that they're going to scheme this thing up to the point where they're going to make Danny Dimes have to throw them to beat them type of things. And I don't think he's capable of doing it. So this is one of those that you very well could see Dallas get out to an early lead and force Danny Dimes, force them to try and win the game on Danny Dimes' right arm. And if that's the case, watch out for Micah Parsons to be unleashed and just coming after that. And that's a recipe for disaster. So I don't see Danny Dimes having a good game. I know a lot of folks out there are kind of all aboard the Danny Dimes train. I am not one of them.
Yeah, I agree. Not with this last injury. I'm fading that. Now, if he can show me otherwise, okay, fine. But I want to see it first.
Agreed. All righty. Luka Magic was saying in a half-point PPR, 12-person team, he's 5-6. Cousins, ETN, Walker, AJ Brown, Mike Evans, Goddard, King Henry, Sutton, Dulcich, Brian Robinson, Allen Robinson, Slayton, Danny Dimes. Am I done? I don't think so. You've got enough horses, I think, to be able to pull something out here. It depends on how many teams that you get into the playoffs and where you're kind of currently sitting and how many games you're back. But ETN and Walker have both been top 10 backs kind of week in, week out. AJ Brown has had a couple of down games, but I think we see that improve. Mike Evans, touchdown away from having a great game every single game there. Dulcich is fine for fill in for Goddard. And King Henry, that's your flex play. So yeah, I think you're actually kind of right in the hunt there. And if you get some things that break your way, you could easily be in there, and you've got enough horses on that you could be a tough out for somebody.
Yeah, for a 12-man league, I think you should be competitive, right? Last week was a down week. Cousins didn't do any much. You had ETN and Walker on a bye. AJ Brown didn't show up. Mike Evans was on a bye. So you had King Henry. Sutton actually had a decent game. Dulcich was okay, not great. Robinson was okay. Allen Robinson got you a touchdown, so that helped. But I get it. You lost. I'm assuming you lost this last week. You just, having, your top two of your top 3 running backs and both your top wide receivers either on buys or bad weeks, your quarterback being out, being stuck with Danny Dimes against a terrible performance there with the Lions. But I don't think you're done. I think there's absolutely a shot here. I think your team's going to be a tough out once you do get into the playoffs. So keep fighting, and I think you'll be able to make some noise and ruffle some feathers here as the season finishes up.
Yeah. Satober, welcome back to the chat, Satober. Traded Pierce for Amon-Ra. What do you think?
I'm okay with it. I think we're starting to possibly see the beginning of that rookie wall for Dameon Pierce. Maybe he's able to kind of snap himself out of it a little bit, but the last couple of weeks have not been nearly as good as the few weeks before that. So hoping for a little St. Brown magic here to wrap up the season like he did last year. I'm in the same boat in our home league, so I'm all for that. I like St. Brown. I think he has an interesting matchup this week against the Bills, who's defensively have not been playing very well lately. We just saw Amari Cooper torch them through the air. Yes, the Bills persevered and won the game, but they weren't playing very well. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair for the Thursday morning game. So you should like the output St. Brown gives you.
Yeah, agreed on that one. Is Kadarius Toney a drop?
It depends on what you're dropping for. Like dropping just because you're frustrated. No, absolutely not. Like I think Toney still has relevance, right? We didn't foresee him tweaking his hamstring and getting a goose egg, right? Like there were a whole bunch of people throughout the fantasy industry. We were both one of them. I know a couple of the different shows that I tune in and listen to that are nationally syndicated. They were pounding the drum for Kadarius Toney this week or last week, excuse me. And so, yeah, we missed, but no one predicts injuries, right? Like that. If we could do that, we would be way, better all the way around. If we go, oh, nope, don't play this guy. He's going to get hurt this week, right? Like it's the golden goose. So just to drop him because you're pissed, no. If there's something out there that is going to be consistently better for your team, sure.
Yeah, I'm in that category myself where it's drop him because you're rather upset that he just goosed you in a matchup. And quite frankly, I ended up playing Kadarius Toney over Chris Olave, over Christian Watson in our home league there. And did that because I went for a ceiling play and thought Kadarius Toney would have a monster game, and certainly didn't come to play there. But again, right, like I'm looking and even seeing like what would I be giving up there? Like what am I getting to try and drop Toney on that one? And if it's not much, if it's not something that I've got to start right away, I'm probably not going to do it because again, Toney could come back. We could see that monster blow up over the playoffs as well, and that's something that you don't necessarily want to have to be staring down when he's healthy and Mahomes is throwing dimes. Drop for Pirine, Murray, Slayton, or Paris Campbell.
I think so. Slayton has a higher floor than what Toney does because now that he is kind of the one and only option there in New York, he should be force-fed a bunch of targets. Pirine, if you're a Mixon owner, yeah, you probably make that call to make sure you have the running back position locked down. If you're not a Mixon owner, I don't know that it does a whole lot for you outside of this week if Mixon misses. So Latavius Murray, I'm trying to stay away from this Denver offense. I think it's just cause for frustration and headache. This week is a nice matchup against the Panthers. So if it's just for 1 week that you're trying to navigate through, I would say probably Murray first, then Slayton, then Pirine. Paris Campbell, I personally am not going to touch him. Derek and I both were on the Paris Campbell train from the second he got drafted, and we have been getting burned by him left and right. And as soon as we stop talking about him, he's starting to –
wide receiver 12 over the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, he's starting to produce again. So, I mean, which is what we thought. Apparently we gave up at the beginning of the season instead of riding it out, right? So I think Slayton's still the option. I think Slayton's the option first. He's the number one guy now. Mm-hmm. Like anytime you can get your hands on a number one receiver, I do think I like that. And yes, Toney, his upside is dramatically higher than Slayton's, but we just saw the floor, right? Like he retweaks a hamstring injury that he'd been fighting all season long. So I understand you wanting to drop him.
Right. Yeah, go sign on that one. So Tober saying, excuse me. So Tober saying thanks for that one. Darkened Fury 92 over on Twitch saying hello. Welcome in, Darkened Fury. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, let's throw them in the chat. Let's go ahead and help you guys get ready to rock and roll for your fantasy goodness here over the next week or so here. Real quick, before we get into the next one, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some Trophy Smack. So here at the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast, you know we all about that cash and trophies, and TrophySmack.com is where you can get those customized trophies. Yep, wanting a little something different flavor than a trophy. They've got rings, they've got belts, all of which you can customize. You can find the link to it down in the description on both the YouTube channel and on the audio version of this podcast. And we click that link, buy your trophy over there. Yeah, it helps the boys out as well. So go ahead, check it out. Lots of fun. Make sure that you're getting all of the hardware for cash and trophies out there as well from TrophySmack.com. All righty. And so Dark and Fury asking, what about Allen Lazard? I guess Dark and Fury, a little bit more context on that one. When you're asking about Allen Lazard, are you talking this week? You talking rest of the season? You talking as a waiver wire, like a waiver wire ad potentially, or are you talking about a drop candidate? Hit us up. Let us know some of the deets on that one, so we can get you a better answer on that one. So, just I guess while we're waiting for that to come in, this week is what he says. So, Allen Lazard, week 12. What do you think, Kevin?
I think Lazard has wide receiver 2 upside with a wide receiver 3 floor is kind of what I think. I don't know that anybody's just going to be shadowing the Packers wide receivers around. We know Watson's kind of exploded here lately, which has taken some pressure off of Lazard. He's been fighting an injury as well. So while Lazard should be functional, I think Rodgers has found an intrigue with a new toy here at the moment. So I am fading Lazard a little bit. Christian Watson seems to be the guy that he's at least looking for. So we'll see how that continues. But at the moment, with the information we have, I think I'm going to fade Lazard ever so slightly. Like I said, a flex play if you're stuck to it. Like, I understand that, but I would not count on him as a wide receiver 1 or 2 this week.
Right. Interesting enough, I've got Lazard listed in the Pines and the Shines for us later this episode here. So kind of tease that one out there a little bit, and I'm going to go into some more detail on my thoughts on Allen Lazard when we get to the Pine and Shine for week 12. But the sneak peek is there. I'm not far behind Kevin on his thoughts on that one there. So speaking of the Pine and Shine, let's go ahead and hit the Pine and Shine recap from week 11, see how we did there. And let's go ahead and start with the Pine there. Kevin, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your Pine?
So I said Pine, Michael Pittman going up against the same Philadelphia Eagles that Allen Lazard is going to be going up against. Consensus rankings had him at 19. He finished at wide receiver 23. Yes, he was serviceable enough if you played him, but because he finished below consensus rankings, we count that as a win. So, yay, I got that one right.
Yes, you did. My Pine last week was Jacoby Myers, who was the expert consensus ranking wide receiver 24 going into the week. He did not have a good game, ended up finishing as the wide receiver 39 on the week, well below on that one. So, you were hoping to get a wide receiver 20 or wide receiver 2 play out of him, and he gave you wide receiver 4 territory. So certainly hit on the Pine on that one. Let's go ahead and move to the Shine here. Kevin, how about you tell us about your Shine?
Well, I had a Shine of Dalvin Cook, who completely crapped the bed, as did the rest of the Vikings team. I'm not going to say anything more about that. It was a loss.
Yes. So my Shine, I called for Monty to have a great game, and sure enough, he delivered on that. He was the expert consensus running back 14 going into last week and outperformed that all the way up to running back 6. So definitely a hit on that one. And that's going to move us on the rankings for the Pine and Shine. Alex still sitting at 10-8. The good news is we'll see whether or not he tries to catch up a little bit this week or falls back a little bit more. I saw that he's got his pines and shines in there for week 12, and we'll get to that one here in a little bit. Kevin is sitting at 13, 8, and 1. So nice second spot there. And then I'm sitting in the driver's seat right now, 14, 6, and 2 on my pines and my shines there. And now I've just got to try and finish this thing off and lead it strong here towards the end and see if we can't steal the crown from you this year there, Kevin.
Yeah, I've not had the Corey Davis shines that come and save me like I did last year.
Sure, absolutely. Those were absolutely insane with the accuracy you predicted a Corey Davis showing last year. It's something else. Dark and Fury 92 over on Twitch asking ETN this week. What are your thoughts on ETN?
Yes.
Yeah.
It must start. Going up against Baltimore, he's going to have to be a focal point of this offense, right? Like the best way to combat Lamar Jackson is to keep him off the field, and ETN is probably the best tool that the Jacksonville Jaguars have to do that. So I'm all for Travis Etienne this week.
Right, and it's one of those two that he'll get enough work there that even if he doesn't necessarily have an exceptional game, he's going to have enough of a game where he's not going to necessarily probably cause you to lose the week. Right now, he's very, even in a down week, he's very much in that running back 2 discussion. And he's got, elite running back upside week to week basis there as well. Like he can go out and win you a week at that position. We've seen him do it several times already this season. So yes, I'm if I got ETN, I'm absolutely playing him. All righty, let's go ahead and start hitting up some of these Thursday night matchups here. And first one, we're going to go into the Bills and the Lions. The Bills are favored by 9. The over-under on this one, 54.5. What are your thoughts here?
I like the Lions to cover the 9 here. I don't see Buffalo magically snapping out of this funk that they're in. And while Buffalo on the money line, yeah, that's probably a safe bet. I do think the Lions keep this a little bit tighter, even though it'll be the second consecutive week the Bills play in this stadium. So it should be an interesting one. I am taking the over. I expect it to be a high-scoring affair. I think the Lions will be able to keep it close for about 3 quarters here and really just kind of be a thorn in the side of the Bills until Josh Allen remembers, oh, yeah, I am Josh Allen. So they'll pull away there at the end, but I think Buffalo keeps it within 9. That's a big number for a road team to cover.
Yes, it is. Although, while they are the road team, they didn't really have to travel at all this week. They were already in Detroit, having had their home game last week moved over there. So at least they didn't have to travel at this point. They were already there. The Lions have been red hot though the last couple of weeks here, and I'm gonna say that they ride the hot hand. I don't think that they pull out the victory, but they are coming off 3 straight wins. Here, granted they were against the Packers, the Bears, and the Giants. The Giants have been pretty good though, but the other 2 teams not so much this whole season. So I do think that you're going to see the over on this one as well. I do think that again, right, Buffalo's had a tougher time. They're banged up on the defensive side of the ball. So I do think that you're going to see Detroit do enough to hang around in this thing to push us up and over on the over there. And I do think that they get just inside the 9 on this one. And like we talked about on this last Friday show, the Bills have had a hard time putting teams away unless it's by like 8-9 points. If it gets down inside of a 1 possession type of game, the Bills let teams just hang around and seemingly cannot just slam the door shut on those teams. So when they jump out to big leads and they're able to maintain it, they're very comfortable doing that. But at 1-score possessions, they seem to have a hard time closing those things out. And I think that we're going to see Detroit manage to hang around this one until the end on this thing. So should be a fun one. Should be a good game to watch. Excited to rock and roll that one. Let's go ahead and head on in to the next matchup here. We've got Dallas and the Giants. And Dallas favored by 9 over under 44.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking the Cowboys to cover on this one. I think that this offense is just clicking right now. The defense, yeah, they struggled slightly against the Packers, right? They had a little hiccup there on the road, rebounded really well last week. We saw what they did to the Vikings, who are much more of a offensive threat than what the New York Giants are. So I think the Giants' saving grace is running the ball is what the Cowboys don't do as well, right? So if they're able to keep this close, I think Saquon could do a little bit of damage here. But if the Cowboys are able to get out to an early start and force the Giants into off script, more type of passing work, right, where they get outside of balance, it's going to be a really long day for a team that doesn't have a true receiving core around it here at the moment. They're just completely depleted.
Right. Man, oh man, I want to call for Dallas on this one, but 9 points is a big number on
24
this
to 10.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think that you're probably not far off on that one. I do think though that that the Giants managed to keep this thing a little bit closer from a defensive standpoint on this one. So I'm gonna call for the Giants to cover. I do think that it's about a touchdown game when it's all said and done. So it's a cover just barely. I do think that the under is going to come into play on this one as well. Both of these teams very good defensively, and I think we're going to see a low-scoring affair. Wouldn't surprise me to see this thing get down to a 24-17 type of matchup. I think is where we'll probably see this thing come through. 21-14, something like that. That's kind of where I'm leaning on that one. Alex is calling for the Giants to cover and the over. He likes a lot of points in this one. And then I also forgot to give his up above on the Detroit and Buffalo game. He's liking Detroit to cover. He's also liking the over there as well. So kind of chalky for all of us there. It seems like on Detroit and over with all three of us in consensus there. Let's go ahead and head to our last Turkey Day game here. We've got the Minnesota Vikings and the New England Patriots. The Vikings favored by 3, the over-under 42.5. What are your thoughts here?
I'm taking Minnesota to cover this. I think it's realistically a push, but I think Minnesota finds a way to bounce back after being embarrassed last week on the prime time or the prime game of the week there for CBS. So I think they do find a way to bounce back. I'm taking the over though. I think there's going to be a way to find some points here in this game that aren't all going to come from Minnesota. I think Ramondre Stevenson is very much at play. Jacoby Myers is going to get his. Damian Harris saw a little bit more work last week against the Jets, right? And so I think that trend continues as the Patriots kind of bounce around and just try and be efficient enough offensively. But I do think we find enough points that we're looking something like a 20, maybe like a 24-21 type game. Like I do think that we get over. It'll just be interesting to see how that happens because I don't have a clear game script to give everyone on why I think we're going to get to 43 points. But I think we can, right? The implied totals, 23-20 Minnesota. So 24-20 may not be that far outside the realm of possibilities.
Right. Alex is there with you thinking that Minnesota is going to cover. He likes the under on that one. I'm going to take New England on this one to cover on this thing. I think it's a push as well, right? Like I'm right there with you. I think that we're going to see a field goal game on this one. And at that point, I'm going to take the team that I think's got the better defense on that one to try and keep it closer, that kind of stuff. So I do like the under on this one, and part of the reason I like the under, it's a couple of things. One, it's kind of the same old chalky nonsense that we've heard forever that Kirk Cousins struggles in the primetime games. This is a big stage. This is a primetime type of game, the late slate. The only game being played on TV from the NFL's perspective. So we've seen Kurt struggle on this one. It is a very short turnaround week on a game where they just got absolutely demolished by the Cowboys there as well. We just saw the New England Patriots go out and win a game without scoring really any offensive points there. Like all 10 of their points came from their defense and special teams. Yes, I get that the field goal was put down there by the offense and they kicked the field goal. I get it. It's still the kicker. The kicker still counts as defense special teams. That's the way I'm looking at that. Anyway, I digress. So they win a game 10-3. And I think that what you're going to see is one of two things happen here. I think that you're going to see Bill Belichick effectively slow down Justin Jefferson to the point where Justin Jefferson may be getting 50, 60 yards on this thing, and I think that they're going to find a way to keep him out of the end zone on that one. That means that Kirk Cousins is going to have to throw the ball elsewhere, or they're going to have to see Dalvin Cook really get this thing going. Now, I could see it to a point where that New England ends up pulling away a little bit on this one, get some pressure after Kirk Cousins, and we see Kirk Cousins do Kirk Cousins things when he gets heavily pressured, and you take Justin Jefferson away a little bit there. So I do think the New England keeps this thing close. I do think that we see the under on this one. This one has a lot of a 17-14 feel for me on this one. And Dark and Fury, I think I also kind of answered your question when I was going through that. Yes, I think that New England's defense is a great start this week. I do think that they managed to keep this thing close. I do think that the under is going to be hit, and I do think that they are going to put enough pressure on Kirk Cousins that this New England defense can potentially turn him over once or twice in this one. What are your thoughts on the question?
Yeah, I think New England's very much in play this week. I think that between the sacks and the ever-looming potential of a Kirk Cousins turnover, I think you get some of those cheat points, right? With them expecting kind of a lower-scoring game. I think it's absolutely in the realm of possibilities here that New England's a top 5 defensive play by the time the week's out.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. I know that a lot of, kind of the consensus rankings doesn't necessarily have them super high this week. I think that they're going to find a way to get after Kirk Cousins, and it's not going to turn out pretty there. And this is going to be a kind of an ugly matchup when it's all said and done. Ugly football game. So any other thoughts on any of these games?
No, sir. I think this should be a lot of fun to watch, though. I'm looking forward to them.
I would agree. Real quick, let's go ahead and talk about some monkey knife fights here. And one of the games we consistently play over there is called Touchdown Dance out there. And basically what that is, you pick 3 players from a game, call a shot on the total number of TDs you think that you're going to score. So you pick 3 players, pick the number of TDs that you think that they're going to score on an over side of things. And ultimately that determines your prize payout there. And so let's go ahead and look at that. I know, Kevin, you picked the Cowboys and the Giants as your game to kind of hone in on there. Who's your 3 players you like there, and what kind of prize are you looking for?
I'm going with the Zeke, Tony Pollard, and CeeDee Lamb combo. I'm running my horses here, so just going the times 2. But I do think that they all find a way to get in the end zone for us.
Fair enough. You are definitely looking for Dallas to cover that 9 with those picks. I love it.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to take that Bills and Detroit game. Higher implied point total here. I think that there's going to be more points scored there. So I like that one. That's where I'm going to hop in and go that route. And I'm going to take Jamal Williams, who has seen the most red zone rushing work of a running back out there this year. Stephon Diggs is always a threat to get into the end zone, and Gabe Davis always a threat to get into the end zone as well. And I kind of wavered back and forth on that Gabe Davis pick, where potentially going Josh Allen, potentially going Devin Singletary, but I do like that Gabe Davis finding the end zone. So I think we've got some pretty good options there. And again, guys, if you have any thoughts out there, throw them out there. Let's rock and roll that. And you can play along with us over there at monkeyknifefight.com. Use the promo code GOBFF. And when you use that promo for new users, you'll get a 100% deposit match up to $100. Alrighty, Kevin, that's going to take us down here into the pine and the shine for week 12 here. And we're going to start off with the pine. And the pine is where we think that somebody's going to underperform their projections, underperform their expectations here. Alex is going to start us off here. He's saying that Alvin Kamara going up against San Francisco is going to have a poor week. What are your thoughts?
I agree with that. Before Alex picked that, I was actually leaning towards looking at Alvin Kamara here going up against San Francisco. So they haven't allowed a running back to go over 56 yards all season long. I don't see this trend ending against the Saints. The Niners are really kind of catching their stride here as they're getting healthy on the defensive end. We saw what they're able to do in keeping the Cardinals in check there in Mexico City. I think we continue to see more of the same. So I like that one. For my pine, I'm going to go David Montgomery this week, right? Finished his running back 6 last week. Now he's going up against the Jets. Justin Fields, not sure if Justin Fields is going to be playing or not, but I do think that if he doesn't go, more of that pressure falls on Monty, and it makes it easier for the Jets to kind of single in on him. So I think this is a week that, especially in DFS, you fade David Montgomery. The volume will be there. There's no question about that, but I don't think the output is going to be RB1 territory like you want it to be.
You are probably right on that one. My pine, and just kind of a side note, that's the third week in a row that David Montgomery has shown up in our pines and our shines. I know you called for the pine a few weeks ago. I called for the shine last week, and he's back in the pine this week here. So riding a roller coaster with the David Montgomery there. Just an interesting side note that I thought I'd throw out. My pine is going to be Allen Lazard on this one. And the Eagles, incredibly tough matchup here for them. They've gone out. They've added more weapons on the defensive side of the ball there. And I think you're right. I don't think we're going to necessarily see Darius Slay follow Allen Lazard around the field there. I think you're right. I think he's just going to pick one side of the field and kind of lock that one down there. But I have a feeling that they're going to put him on the same side that we're going to typically see Allen Lazard take the majority of his snaps from. And it's a tough matchup overall. The Eagles defense has been looking good all year long. And this is one of those that when we've seen the Packers have to have Aaron Rodgers really step back and throw the ball and really try and keep it close throwing the ball this year, they're not able to do it. And this is one of those that we could see the Eagles, who have enough firepower on the offensive side of the ball, get out to enough points and put a game script, put it in a negative game script for the Packers that actively hurts these guys, even though they're getting more targets there. Kind of a weird thing and kind of a thing that you don't necessarily think when you start thinking opportunities. But again, Allen Lazard is a guy that is a wide receiver 2 is kind of where he's consistently being put in the expert consensus rankings. I'm going to say that I think he probably finishes more in the wide receiver 3, if not lower than that territory. So I'm not looking to start him, looking to pine him and go other routes there. All right, let's go ahead and move over to the shine. And with the shine is one of these that we think these guys are going to outperform their expectations. They're going to have some really good weeks, and we think that they're going to absolutely be a superstar shining for your team this week. Alex went with the Alec Pierce going up against Pittsburgh move there. Kevin, who'd you pick for your shine?
My shine this week is Mr. Jeff Wilson Jr. going up against the Houston Texans, who have the worst rushing defense in the NFL. Over the last 5 weeks, they're averaging 163 yards given up on the ground each game. Season average is actually worse than that. Then they're looking at about 172 yards a week on the ground. So I like Jeff Wilson a lot this week. So he is going to be my shine.
I like that one. That was one that I was getting ready to call that one. And I looked at the show doc and went, he beat me to it. You're right. This is one of those that I'm actually slightly concerned about both Tyreek and Jalen Waddle's output this week, just from the standpoint that you don't have to throw the ball against Houston. They will absolutely let you, just march the ball down the field, running it, and let you put it into the end zone, running the ball there as well. So that's a little bit concerning for me from from those guys. But I love that Jeff Wilson pick. My shine is going to be Latavius Murray, and Yeah, I'm right there with you that I really want to pivot everywhere I can on most Broncos players, just because I don't trust this offense. And there's thoughts that some of these other things that as far as that goes. But with Latavius Murray, this is a volume play for me, and I think that he's going to get enough volume this week to be absolutely usable for you, and he's going to outshine his deal. Right now, he's a running back 3 in most rankings. Most folks out there think of that. I think that he can easily get you up into a running back 2 type of output there. So I'm going to call for the Lat Murray shine on this one. And again, part of that is the fact that Melvin Gordon is now a free agent. Chase Edmonds, Mike Boone, both on the IR. And I don't think that Marlon Mack is the guy to do that. And so I think you're going to see Lat Murray get an absolute ton of run, 20-ish opportunities in this one. So I absolutely love that one. Bronson over on YouTube asking, who do I trade Zeke for, Amari Cooper or Mike Evans?
I would rather have Mike Evans. I trust Tom Brady with Mike Evans more so than a quarterback change here in the next 2 weeks over to Deshaun Watson as he's trying to knock some of the rust off and figure out what that looks like. So if you have a choice in the matter, I want Mike Evans. I'm not going to scoff at Amari Cooper, but I do think that there might be some growing pains as Deshaun Watson gets back into football shape and gets used to playing starting quarterback in the NFL again after a damn near 2-year hiatus.
Right. Like I cannot fault that logic at all. And that's kind of where I'm at there as well. And I get it that Amari Cooper certainly looks like a much hotter commodity at this point, where over from week 6 through 11 has been the wide receiver 9 for fantasy and half point PPR scoring, whereas Mike Evans is wide receiver 34. But I'm right there with you from the standpoint that if Jacoby Brissett was going to remain the quarterback, I would go with the Amari Cooper route over the Mike Evans. But I don't want it where we're going to see a changeover in the offense happen in a couple of weeks. I think you're going to see some growing pains go through this one. The Browns have established that run identity. Now you got a quarterback that you're paying $250 million to that's all guaranteed there. They're going to throw the ball. And that just comes down to who has built the chemistry over the last few weeks here with Deshaun Watson in a practice setting to it. I don't know that I want to necessarily try and trust that going through it. Mike Evans, if the touchdown's starting to come, and this could be one of those two that we saw Tampa Bay come out of their bye week a couple of years ago and absolutely light the league on fire. I'm not saying that is what's going to happen, just something to keep in mind that we have seen this happen before from both the Tampa Bay team and Tom Brady, where they get through a bye week, things click, and they make a massive run in a March here. And at that point, I'll take the guy that has the established rapport with his quarterback. So I'm also on board with the Evans route there as well. So, all righty. Kevin, I do believe that's going to take us down here about to the end of it. Do we have if anybody's got any final thoughts, questions, comments, anything like that, let's throw them out there. Let's get you guys some answers here before we sign off and call it a night. But, one of the things, I'm just going to go off here on a little bit of a tangent on this one. And we're both Denver Broncos fans. And this was one of those things that it was very interesting to see this come through when the head coach gives up play calling duties, earlier in the week. So Nathaniel Hackett gave up play calling duties earlier in the week, and they already hired in another coach to basically be, a consultant and help him manage game situations and go through some of that stuff. So I'm just kind of curious, what is it, that's one of the things that kind of led me to thinking, like, what is it that he actually does? Not doing any of the play calling duties. He's not doing any of the game management stuff. Realistically, what is he doing, and why are we continuing to deal with this? And we just haven't moved along and it made the attention zone that we're looking for a new head coach.
That's a great stinking question, and I wish I had a good answer for you. Nathaniel Hackett's going to be a one and done. Like, there's no question about it. Like, this isn't the ownership's group's guys, right? They The new ownership group came in after they hired him. He hasn't shown anything. So they're going to bring someone else in. And George Payton, I'm not saying that he's on the hot seat necessarily, but he has to have a stellar draft and free agent class to try and turn this team around. Otherwise, he's going to be short-lived too, and they're going to reboot and start going from there. So you paid Russ, so Russell Wilson's staying.
You're stuck with him at this point.
So they're going to have to work some things out here in Denver. It's not fun to be a Bronco fan here at the moment.
No. I was just one of those that I was going through some things and last week, and I saw that pop through, and I'm like, what is it that this guy's actually doing these days? So just an interesting kind of side notes and thoughts and all of that kind of good stuff. But it does not look like we've got any more questions or comments, anything like that coming in here. So Kevin, any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
Good luck. Right? Get into it. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Enjoy the time with the family. Enjoy the time, whether it's a beer, glass of wine, bottle of water, whatever it is. Enjoy the time hanging out with your family and loved ones. Good luck to everyone this week. As you have questions, feel free to hit us up. We're always around our socials, right? And so we'll chime in just as soon as we can and get you some sort of feedback and at least an opinion of what we think you should do.
Absolutely. Actually, here's one for you. Here's a question for you. Keep, trade, cut Thanksgiving dinner. You gotta keep one, you gotta trade one, you gotta cut one, or for everybody else out there, start, bench, cut on that. You gotta, as far as a dish from Thanksgiving, traditional Thanksgiving dishes, keep, trade, cut.
I'm going to keep the mashed potatoes and gravy.
Okay.
I'm going to cut the sweet potato casserole dish that it's just not my thing. So pass on the sweet potatoes. I'll cut those, and I'm going to trade green bean casserole.
Okay. You and I've got the same trade. I'll go with that one. My cut, though, is the cranberry sauce. Cut the cranberry sauce. No, thank you. We'll move along, right? Like, why that's on there, who knows? But the keep is going to, and that's one of those, I went back and forth hard between the protein of the dinner and the potatoes. Since you took potatoes, I'm going to go with the protein of the dinner. So whether it's prime rib, whether it's turkey, whether that's ham that's on your Thanksgiving table, that's my keep. So I'm going to keep the protein. I'm going to trade the green beans, and I'm going to cut the cranberry sauce. So I like it. And again, Kevin mentioned it. You can find us on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Good Old Boys FF. And you can hit us up on the YouTube channel, the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast YouTube channel, also youtube.com/@GoodOldBoysFF. Click the subscribe button over there. And again, if you have any questions, hit us up. Let us know. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Happy Turkey Day. Be safe. Toodaloo.